Unless you want to. Hello, guys. This is Yatish. Welcome again to the Finance Boys, part 7, I think. No, like part 5 of the Finance Boys web calls. Yes, I am Yatish, and I will let Tarek introduce himself. But I am the current MCVP Finance, MCVP Fund for short. And today we're just having a consultancy space, specifically focused around investments. So anybody that drops in, drops out, has any questions, you can WhatsApp on the group, and we will try to talk through it all, answer any questions. I'll offer my recommendations, or we can have a discussion. Thanks. I'll let Tarek introduce himself now.
What's up? I'm Tarek.
Okay.
LCD coach.
Yes.
Of the year.
And finance NST to some. No.
And pseudo finance NST.
No. Yeah. So ask away. There are 2 of you here right now. Good.
Yeah.
Yes. Any questions you have? If you have no questions, we will sit here because the content is on you, not on me.
Oh.
I said that before. I said there will be no content unless you ask questions.
Did you not prepare?
You guys did not prepare. Tell me about the investments you're currently either planning or just executed. I'm going to talk about them.
Yeah.
Or did you invest nothing? That's the question.
No, you're not.
Since EVCo, we haven't really invested anything.
Okay.
Except for a little bit more R&R, but that was the same like function of the core stuff we were doing before.
Yep.
So that's really it for us, but I don't know what San Jose is doing.
Cool.
For us, like since EVCo, we wanted to have Buddha tabling. We're actually starting that next week.
Okay.
And like I also we did like a lot of competition
People talking
for April because this is our peak month,
flashes.
but we don't have the results yet because it's really, for us it's only VPs performing, so I don't know how to get members to perform. It's just always that 2 to 3 members who kind of perform and the rest don't, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think a lot of the ways to incentivize people is to understand first what they want to be incentivized by and what incentivizes them. And so whether that's an R&R campaign that specifically says this team, really benefits from, they're motivated by money. And so you could offer them discounts on going on exchange if they haven't gone. Or if they're really motivated by recognition, then every week you could have an LC member of the week. I know an internal R&R campaign that is really successful actually would be Madison's. So you could talk to Jesse, who's the VPF, as well as Ben, who's the LCP, about specifically how they do something similar to what the MC channel does, in the sense, I'm going to start laughing because I see John. They do something similar to what the MC does in terms of recognizing a member of the week. And so if you don't already do that internally, whether you have a Facebook group or a WhatsApp group or just at your LCM, something that we did for my LC was specifically, we had, this is really hard not to smile loud. We actually had a little plush toy that would be handed off to like the member of the week, and they would specifically showcase themselves, what they did. And so first I would recommend like researching and actually maybe working with Tony as your TM to understand what motivates your members. Specifically the ones that aren't performing. Are they not connecting with the organization? Are they just not feeling motivated? And so trying to figure out what the motivation level is, and improving that, but also working on how to incentivize them, whether it's monetarily, recognition-wise. I know Tarek might have better thoughts because he coaches a lot of LCs in terms of certain members performing, certain members not doing anything.
Oh, that was like my cue to go for it. The problem with member motivation is like it really depends on like the individual members, right? So like some members do get motivated by like performance or like challenges, and they're like super competitive. Other members are more motivated by like purpose and culture and why I'm doing what I'm doing and stuff like that. Do you have like problems with specific members, or do you have problems with like all of them?
I guess it's like because we did like a lot of competitions, and then like I had this member come up yesterday. She's like, "Oh, why do we do so many competitions? Like they don't motivate me, but I know they do my my team gets motivated by them, so I guess it's okay. So that's when I realized, wow, I think because we do the LC of the week, and we have like individual competition and also like a competition by function. So because I know some people they work when it's like they don't want to let their group down kind of thing. So so we're kind of doing each individual thing. So I don't know at this point what else to do, you know?
Something that I was going to say something that I actually learned outside of ISIC, interestingly enough, that I think is really applicable to ISIC is the idea of like what's in it for me. And so doing a survey, just briefly, like what actually motivates your members is a step in the right direction in terms of actually understanding what to do, because it's really easy to assume or make guesses and trying to, guess and check of what to do to engage everybody. But the sad truth is not like one thing will not engage every single person. So you have to find multiple ways without them each being in several different directions to actually get your members to want to perform and also stay in the organization and achieve results. And so one thing that you said that was really important is I understand that it's motivating my team, the competition, but it doesn't motivate me. So then having an individual conversation with them at the micro level to understand what they would like to see, and seeing how you can integrate that into your existing competitions or campaigns or whatever you're doing. So
yep. I would definitely add that, like, following team standards alone covers a lot of the personal, like, what is my purpose and how do I connect to ISIC in the United States and how do I connect to my LC's like mission and vision and stuff like that. So like, if that's what members are motivated by, following team standards already covers it. If your members are motivated by competition, your LC already presents competitions like you were talking about, so that's good on its own. If your members motivated by, I don't want to let down my team, that is something that the VP has to do instead of like being an LC thing. It's a VP to their team thing. So you already have the channel set up so that everybody's motivated throughout, like however they're motivated by. If they're motivated by purpose, team standards is doing it, so like it's done. If they're motivated by competition, the LC is doing it, so it's done. If they're motivated by like the team and like we are one and we're gonna do this together, your VP, the VP is the one responsible for that, and they gotta make sure that they're like pushing that through. Or money, if they're motivated by like IXP rewards or something, then that's y'all.
Yeah. And it could even be just another suggestion. If the ISIC angle isn't working from the perspective of, oh, I'm the OGV member of the week, or, oh, like I get to go on IXP. Also, you can look externally to what you can motivate people with in terms of gift cards or in terms of events that exist on campus that you want to incentivize, or networking events. For example, if a person's an IGT and they normally out of pocket go to an event, you can say, we'll start paying for your events, or we'll pay for something John's doing right now with his VPs is LinkedIn Sales Navigator, for example. And so you could say, if you achieve X amount of results, or if you get an open, that already pays for itself. And so you're not risking your financials in order to get them to do things. Are the members that you're specifically talking about, or like maybe the example that you gave was like one member feels like their team is motivated but they're not? Is that like an OGV team? Is it your IGT team? Maybe we can talk more. It's IGE, okay. Have you guys gauged what like actually motivates this person yet, or no?
Oh yeah, we actually, because it's like we had a Spartan showcase, so it's like a campus event. So
yeah.
So there are a couple people of us. So like we were asking her, so what motivates you? And yeah, she didn't really answer to that question. So I don't know if she so she didn't answer. So I don't know what else to expect from her.
Maybe she doesn't know.
Yeah, that's true. Sometimes it's really difficult to be put in a position where you don't know what necessarily motivates you within an organization. You just join because you expect it to give you something. And so there are a set of guiding questions I think that could at least give you a better understanding. I think what Tarek said was important, was like, you can ask them, are you motivated by money? Are you motivated by recognition? Are you motivated by incentives outside of ISIC? And so at least getting those three things are the main things that most people are motivated by, and so it'll hit a huge chunk of people. But if they're not motivated by any of those things, you can ask them even from an external perspective, like what has motivated you in a job that you've had, or what has motivated you to perform in school. Because I think one thing that ISEC does is it puts you in a scenario where you can do a lot, but also the people that don't feel like they're being engaged, not even just engaged, the people that don't feel like the organization is engaging them are more likely to not feel like it matters to them, and so they're okay with the complacency of it. Something that John whispered in my ear as we were talking was actually that a member can say that they're not motivated, but it might be that they're not motivated by most things that ISEC is doing for them. They're just wanting to see the inherent benefit of ISEC without necessarily like doing anything or performing. And it's not always the case. In fact, it's very rarely the case. But the question I always asked, at least when I was in TM for like 2 weeks, was why did you join the organization? That's a really good first starting point, because then you can say, even though your team experience isn't getting you there, how can we accompany that or like integrate that into your performance, goals? Or what are your KPIs? What are your personal goals? Things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer your question, or would you like more discussion on that? Okay. Cool.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? That was a good question. It wasn't 100% like
finance,
but it was like finance is in there, which is good. And I'm glad that I was able to somewhat answer it.
It was investment related. I like it.
It's good. It was investing in your members, which is the key to success.
Michigan has a question.
Yep.
Versus if she
not necessarily. I don't know, like what we've done so far, like I'm trying to think of ways to get the exchange functions to like utilize the resources that we have to come up with new and creative ways to get EPs and opens and things like that. And our OGV function did it once with a big marketing stunt that I thought was pretty cool and innovative. And I don't know, like since then we've just done a lot more like online and emailing things, but like I feel like we could do more doing like active sales, I guess, to people on our campus.
Yeah, do you want to elaborate on what that marketing stunt was? Because I don't think everybody maybe necessarily knows.
Yeah, so back in February, we set up like a poster board in our quad, I guess you could say, and we just attached a lot of balloons that had different world problems written on them, like hunger, or like gender inequality, or like things like that. And we would have people come by with toothpicks, and they would come and they'd pop the balloon. We were saying things like, come and solve a world problem and pop the balloon. And then they would do that, and then we'd hand them a flyer about ISEC and talk to them about how they can go abroad to do things to solve those problems while on an exchange.
Cool. And I think an interesting point that you brought up that's maybe tangentially related, if it's not, we don't have to talk about it, but I think something you said was like the resources that we have at our disposal is like your teams aren't necessarily utilizing them to the biggest or the greatest extent possible. And so one thing too is to actually understand the resources that you do have, not only just financially in ISEC, but also like maybe your university gives you funding as a student organization, or at least understanding what already is are the resources that you have is a good first or second or third step in engaging your teams even further than just your ISEC bank balance or like your ISEC funds, things like that. So yeah, but that's a cool marketing stunt. It's been done before and it has varied success. It just has to be done correctly. So yes, I recommend this. Investment's good. Anybody else with questions? We can also have general discussion. You guys can talk about ideas you're thinking of. They don't have to be questions. Anything that you have on your mind that you want to flesh out or get feedback about. We have a group of 3 VPs here, plus Tarek, plus me. So.
This is not really about investment. Is that okay?
That's fine. Yeah, whatever discussions flourish is fine.
Well, this is not really a discussion, but like I know for IGT, when they submit invoices, like is that like the VP's role the VP IGT is supposed to do that, or are we supposed to do that?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So the process goes as follows. Essentially, the IGT network, they get an open, and so they have to put it onto Podio. They fill out all the information. They work with John specifically to open the opportunity, and then we invoice once we have all the necessary information. And so on the finance side, most of what you're doing is just ensuring that the invoice is paid or following up, or at least that once the invoice is generated on the Intech side, then you can push it to your team to send out to the company. Or if it's, say, like a co-sale with the national team, then John will handle it from there. But that communication of once the information that we need to actually create an invoice happens, then on the finance side, you need to communicate with your IGT team and say, hey, this invoice, like, or what companies have we opened opportunities with? Has the invoice been created? And they should actually know the answer to that. If they don't, no big deal. You can always just go into Intact, look for the company. And so that way you're in tune with what the IGT team is doing at all times, or the IGE team. So all the ICX operations, you'll see the invoices are generated on Intact. And so you just search for the company name, and you should be able to pull up the invoice. If the invoice doesn't pop up, then either it hasn't been created, or necessary information wasn't received by us, or we just haven't generated it. And then you can push to me as VP Finance to see, has this invoice been created, or can it be created, things like that. And so your job is mostly just to support with that and actually give them the invoice to send to the company, or send like if you're in direct contact with the company as well, you can just print the invoice off or email the invoice to yourself, send it to the company, and they collect that way. Make sense? So like,
is John responsible?
So yeah. So John actually works with his IGT or IGE network to put all of the necessary information onto Podio. It's in, I believe it's the IG and IGT space. And so once an open has been created, then he actually puts all the information, like, or your VP would put all the information on the platform. John will make sure that it's all correct, and then we generate an invoice from there.
Okay.
Yeah. So you would basically just be coordinating with them. Like, once, say, Cisco as an opportunity, once we have all the information necessary, we'll generate the invoice at the national side, and then instead of you as the VPF getting a notification, your VP IGT would already know that the necessary information has been provided. So then they would say, hey, can you check if this invoice is ready? And if it is on Intact, then you just search it up. You can get it, and you'd be able to push it to the company. So, yes. Cool. That's a good question. It's normally a question people do not ask, and then it gets confusing. So. Any investments that you guys have made that did not go well that you would like to talk about, just as a GCP, BCP sharing sort of opportunity? This space is as long or as short as you want it. If you want to end the call at any time, you can say, I'm done, goodbye. And then once none of you are left, I end the call. So, yes. This is also an interesting time of day, so I didn't expect a lot of people to come, but I'm glad that you guys were able to make it. So, and yeah, you looked like you were about to say something.
I think in some of our past investments, it's been tough to kind of set the MOS, I guess you could say, or like the standards that we should hold ourselves to in order to make the investment successful. And that's something we ran into when we invested in the career fair back in February that we were a part of. And we didn't really know necessarily what we would be able to do in terms of like how many resumes we would collect or how we would follow up on the event. And so it was a little bit like, I feel like less successful than it could have been, but
yep.
I think moving forward, it's important to set those goals. And that's something that I've learned. And I think in future investments, we're going to be able to do that a lot better.
Yeah. So did you set up a timeline for that specific career fair, or did you say, hey, like there's the career fair and it was a few days before, it was like a week before, and you said, we're going to go for it? And then also what was like so it's a two-part question. What was the planning that went into that with the team that it affected? I think from what you said, it was like your OG or OGT team, right? Yep. It was like
Yeah, so Nazla was the one that found out about it and did the registration and organized it. And she was actually only supposed to be the only one there. She actually brought Larissa with her because she was on our coaching team.
I remember that, yes.
Yeah, so they were there. I actually was there too because I just happened to be available. So we were the only ones that handled it. And after that, I think a lot of the resumes were just handed off to our OGE VP.
Okay.
But I think that happened a little late, and by that time, like people lost interest, which is our biggest, I think, let down from that event as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so in terms of planning, it was more so like Nazla registered for the event, and then a few of you went, but then it was handed off. Okay. And I think one thing you said is also important is like once you have all of the resumes, like what's your conversion time from getting those to actually like moving it? And
right.
So it's good learning at least as well.
Definitely.
So planning is always good. And then like you said before, like what's the actual measure of success for an event is really important to know before you go into the event.
Yeah.
And that's something I learned like when I was a VPF at the local level is you always have to have something tangible that you're tracking. Otherwise there's not a baseline for you to compare it to, or there's not like was it successful or not, because you can look back at an event and determine it to be successful by whatever metrics you make up after the fact. But it's really important to have those metrics beforehand. So.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of the stuff we've been trying this semester have been like innovative for us, something that we've never done in the past, or maybe some things that we haven't really seen a lot of other LCs do in the past. And so it's tough to kind of come up with those standards because we don't really know how successful it's going to be. But I know that's like why you have an MOS. So yeah, it's challenging for us sometimes.
Definitely. No, and I think it's actually a big progress from what I've seen is like something you said was it wasn't a successful event, and normally people will never admit that. And so it's actually like it's good that you know what you didn't like about it, what didn't go right, but then also like you got a lot of resumes, like it was successful, it just there were certain steps that were either missing or that like can always be improved upon, of course. So that's good. And yeah, did you have any additional points, Tarek, at least from your experience coaching LCs as well? Maybe you have some perspective.
I'm trying to think of like examples specifically.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of blanking. I don't know why. Yatish.
This is not rehearsed.
This is not rehearsed. Give me your questions ahead of time next time. No, not right now, but
okay. Yeah.
I will follow up with you then if you need any more examples about it, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and what we can do as well that I just thought of is we can, think up some examples based on these questions. I'll start writing down all the questions you guys have or any like examples you're giving, so that way we have a written transcript as well, not just a long video of us talking about various topics. And so then it's more so like we can put it on the hub as well. If you haven't checked it out, the ICQS Hub has a finance space now. It is basic, but it has most of the it actually has all the recorded videos that we've had thus far, as well as like your affiliation fees, things like that. Shameless plug.
What we could do is some of the questions if we find that they're repetitive, we can have like an FAQ section. Yeah.
I think that's important. As this is an investment consultancy space, we will also talk about the time that we're investing in the ICQS Hub. So.
A little unrelated to investments, but are we going to see the affiliation fee on Intact soon? Because I know that the quarter just ended.
Yeah, as because the first fee was April 1st, and it's April 17th now, 18th now. 18th. Yeah. So I believe it should be reflecting this week. I'll just double check because it's a simple internal transfer. It's not like it's an external expense or anything like that. So I'll just double check what's up. But I know that the accountants have made some transfers, but I don't think it's reflected on everybody's bank balance yet, which is important. Okay. So I can send them a quick email right now as well. It's 6:30, but tomorrow morning I can just give them a call as well. So I'll do that right now.
So when is the Intact going to be fixed again?
That's a great question. I on a live broadcast, I do not feel comfortable answering the question, mostly because I don't want to be incorrect. It's an ongoing effort, essentially, between the accountants, myself, and my assistant. And so while that has been my answer for quite a while now, we have made a lot of progress. It's just it has to get all fixed at once. Otherwise, the issue is if anything's outstanding in terms of errors, then we have to go back and rescind everything that we've done. So we don't want somebody to look at their bank balance, it be incorrect from what's actually what their bank balance should be. And so for that reason, it puts you at like a really weird freeze where you don't know anything that's happened, even though internally you're tracking, like, here are the revenues we're supposed to have, they're not showing up. Here are the expenses we're supposed to have, they are showing up, so it looks like we only have expenses, or even the expenses aren't showing up. And so it's just a toss-up of like what your bank balance actually is, which is very frustrating, I understand. But yes, I will make a commitment now that I will update you guys every single week, at least once a week, on Fridays. And so another shameless plug is I will be talking to Tarek after this call just to set something up. But like, these webinars are not the only things I want to do on a weekly basis, or not a weekly basis, but what I want to do on a weekly basis is Finance Fridays. And so I'll have just like a 30-minute space where anybody can call in, and we'll have a discussion about, you know, things that you're doing, updates on Intact, all of that stuff. That way, even after Intact's fixed, we'll have like a weekly space where I can just update the VP class about what's going on, and anybody can tune in, stuff like that. So I'll make that more of a scheduled thing. We'll do it every Friday because I'm not traveling anymore. And so that is, I think that would help at least with the transparency of what's going on. And I can say, we worked on this week, or I didn't get anything, you know, so that way you know what I'm doing, because I promise I'm not doing nothing. But yes.
He's very busy.
That's not true either. But yeah.
Very busy man.
I will. Yes. So I'll keep you guys updated, but I will check on the affiliation fee that you asked about, just to make sure, because it should have been transferred a long time ago, like almost 2 weeks ago. So I'll check. So yes.
And who did we follow up with about the NSF funds? Because I know I applied like 2 months ago, and then I haven't really got any response. So.
Yeah. So did you get an investment? Did you get an NSF decision yet, or did you get a decision but you haven't received the money?
Yeah, we got a decision, and we applied for the reimbursement thing on Podio, but we haven't really gotten the money yet.
Okay, so if you comment me on it right now, I can actually process it, and so you should get it by tomorrow. I'll just have to like verify it, of course, after this call, but I can do that immediately. So yeah, just like at Yatish, and then it's got my funny picture pops up. So.
Whenever y'all need to do something, just at
Sorry, you were saying something?
No, keep going. Don't worry about it.
All right, yeah. So, okay, I know like our job description, it has like certain things, like kind of operational stuff, but like being a VPF, like, I don't know, because to be honest, I don't know, I was having like a one-on-one with Thomas the other day, and it was not really fulfilling. I don't know, it's kind of vague, but I feel like there's something other as a VPF I should be doing, but I'm not.
Yeah, so I think the JD is very, at least from reviewing it a few times throughout the term, is very flexible by nature, but I think a lot of it requires direction with your LCP as to what else you should be doing, because I think it varies from LC to LC. At least when I was LCVP Finance with my LCP, what I did was, not only did I have my FTMs, because I did have members at the time, but I also sat in on other FTMs. I had one-on-ones with each of the other VPs to understand their direction for each week. And then I also, on top of that, had one-on-ones in a more casual setting with my LCP, just to understand what she's been told by all of the VPs on a weekly basis, as well as what the VPs have told me, because there are two perspectives. There is what VPs tell their LCP, and there's also what VPs tell their VPF. And so from a strategic focus, you want to understand the investments that they plan to make at least 2 weeks in advance. And if they don't have any investments 2 weeks in advance, if something comes up at the last minute, at least understanding I think it's important to gauge what your VPs are thinking at all times, and then being able to work with your LCP to plan for that. Even though you've already solidified a budget and things like that, on a week-to-week basis, the operations should never be something you're uncertain about as a VPF. And so a lot of your time can actually be spent working with the VPs, not as like an LCP, like a secondary LCP, but more so as what are the financial investments that are being made, and then does that align with what they've been telling your LCP? Because if there's a misalignment there, then you can at least have that discussion as your LCP's sort of like right-hand person to make sure that your budget is always in check, your financial goals are being hit, but then they're driving for exchanges regardless, right? And so it gives you a different perspective, but it also is really important that you align that with your LCP on a weekly basis. But the only way to do that is to understand what's actually happening in your LC. And so talking to JJ, talking to Haley, talking to, like all of your exchangers, right? So.
Yeah, I attend their, yeah, because that's what Thomas told me. So
yeah,
like I started attending their workspaces and FDAN. So
yeah. Because I think
it had one-on-ones, but
yeah. Because it's one thing to attend the FTMs, it's another thing to like have specifically what your contribution is in them. Because the FTMs, if my understanding is correct, your FTMs are all happening at the same time, right? Their FTMs are different times. Okay, that's good. My FT, like for my LC, all of the FTMs are at the exact same time every single week. And so I could only attend one of them. And that's why I had a team. That was the only reason I had a team, was just to like be part of that team, but then also reporting back to me. And so for that reason, the structure is not to have LC members for finance, because you as a VP should be coordinating with them, or at least having like sitting in or having conversations with them, right? And so, yes, I would understand. I would also sit down with those VPs and say, what do you see as my contribution if I attend your FTM? And then making sure that you're not, as VPF, like all of a sudden overstepping your bounds and being too proactive in there, but also being able to contribute and have discussion and say, oh, like, did you guys think about this financial angle? In many ways, the VP, the local committee vice president role for finance, is very much like a opportunity to be a consultant. And that's like the way I've always viewed it, is you are not only a consultant to your VPs and their teams, but also to the LCP in terms of managing the budget, making investment decisions based on your financial capacity and your like what your outcomes should be, and keeping them aligned to that. Because as an organization, we are an exchange and leadership development organization, but there is like a financial component to that that not everybody should be thinking about, and that's your primary job, is to be able to bring that angle, bring that perspective in that direction. Make sense?
Yeah.
I talk a lot. I can be more concise.
No, good. It's like, even if I attend their FTs, like we have the synergy thing going on, so where I focus on IGT, IGE, and where Tony or VPTM focus on OGV. Okay. Like, even though my contributions, they're mostly for like being like an IGE member. Like I give like sales advice and things like that, but that's not my role. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I think what you should think about, and we can even have more further discussion outside of this call, is like, how do you leverage your IGT experience? Because I know that you went to, I forgot the name of the event in San Francisco or the San Jose area, as like also doing sales. Yeah, startup grind, yeah. And that's a perfect example of like where your skill set from before you were a VPF can contribute a lot, is because you are there in sort of in the trenches. But then also from the consulting side, you see what they're doing, and so you understand the financials that need to go behind that. And so you're not only always thinking of like, oh yes, as an IGT salesperson, I wish I had more investments in, networking events, or I think this was what I wish I would have been invested in me. And you can bring that to the table and also say, now that I'm in finance and I see what other teams are doing outside of just IGT or IGE, like the OGV team wants these kinds of things, I think we can bring that back to the ICX side, or vice versa. The ICX side is doing these things and OGV doesn't know what they want to invest in. You can say, here, like the recommendations. Not everything translates, but I think because you were in an exchange function, you can bring the perspective of what an exchanger needs in order to succeed from a financial perspective. And then aligning that with your LCP, making sure like you're not telling them, let's spend all of our money, which you should never say. But then like making sure everybody's aligned. Because that's something I wish I had, was I was always in finance. I was never an exchanger. I was never TM, except for after my VPF term. And so it wasn't very helpful for me to say something, because it was taken with the perspective of I haven't done it. So it's really hard for me to actually connect with it. And that was one of the biggest struggles, at least for me, on the MC, was like, I completely understood the functions, but I had to quickly learn what it meant to do operations in them, like what an operational week looks like, so that I could actually contribute to the discussion. But I think because you have an IGT background, you are able to already do that. You just have to think about the financial, like you have to take a step back. You can't be an IGT member you are the finance person giving advice to somebody that was you. So, yeah. And I see Eric has joined the call as well. Hello, Eric.
Hello, this is Eric.
This is Eric. For those of you that don't know, he was LCP of New York City last year. And so he is also one of my NST members. So that's cool. So he can also give his thoughts as a former LCP, cool finance background. Wasn't a finance person in ISIC, but is an economics student or was an economics student.
Yeah.
So he has cool external perspective.
I was on OGV for the majority of my experience for like 2 years, and then I was LCP. But yeah.
Did you have any thoughts about what we were just talking about in terms of being an IGT member and then going into finance and like how you actually leverage that? Like from your OGV background, how do you think that helps? Yeah.
I mean, mostly because like if you know the exchanges kind of thing, and if you look at it as, you know, where during the customer flow kind of thing that you can where does it make sense to put in money to invest in to make the process easier, you know, or to give the best customer experience kind of thing, then that's what you can contribute as a finance position right now. Because like if I was OGV, then I can see, okay, you know, maybe I want to put in money into the attraction side, so I could spend money into, you know, some really good promotional materials, or I can make like online accounts for if you want like do some like digital stuff, if you want Facebook ads, that kind of stuff, because you know that attraction is, you know, relatively harder in your own local reality, so that's where the money needs. But you know, all that stuff, you want back end things like brand advocacy or during like OPS kind of stuff, you could see, you know, we really need to make this part of the experience a lot better. So if you can understand what the parts of the customer flow work or don't work for you right now, and you can see where finance can come in with the investments, you could really smooth everything out and make it a really great experience for your customers, but also make it more efficient in terms of like what you do. Because it just putting in some investments, or rather spending some money in key areas, can make the processing time a lot smaller, can get you a lot more people just by making the right decisions at the right time in terms of how you spend the money. So just if you understand the process and the customer flow, then you can see ideally where finance makes the most sense for your own local reality, because every reality has different, or rather every LC has different realities in terms of, you know, what works and doesn't work in their LC. So, you know, like New York City, we had a lot of consideration issues and a lot of like back end like brand advocacy kind of issues. So then we can see, okay, how do we convert faster, or how do we incentivize people to actually give us, you know, some marketing materials and things like that. So then that's where we put in our investments. Whereas another LC may be very good at that, but weak in something else, and they can boost that up with their own finances and investments in their own way. So if you just, so exchange backgrounds really help with finances. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, Eric.
Yep.
Something going off that I've kind of taken on as my job and my role, I guess, in my LC is building a lot of relationships with the departments that we have on campus, because something that I think a lot about is how like the sustainability of our own LC is going to be after I'm out of my VP position and years later. So what I do is the majority of my day-to-day work is I'll be going to departments and setting up meetings with chairs and directors and deans to talk about ISIC and the kinds of opportunities that we can offer their students, and building not only just partnerships for marketing so that we can pass our materials directly to their students and get opens and get EPs and things like that, but also offer them options to kind of make ISIC work for them in a more unique way. And usually I ask for a financial contribution with that as well. And so I'll say, for $500 or something incorporated into your annual budget for our organization, we can have these expectations for our EPs, whether it's like reflections that they're interested in having for their own students for the respective departments, or participation in panels or things for their own schools or whatever it may be. And so I think it's important to do that because I mean, the finances of HLC is usually so variable year to year that I think it would be a good way to like set up a strong foundation. And I think so far it's been pretty successful for us. We have 4 official sponsors that have contributed money to us and have incorporated us into their budget. And we have about 20 more that I think are going to consider us even more next semester, because it also makes a lot more sense for departments to do it in the fall after their fiscal years have restarted. So it's been a little bit of a struggle this semester because they're like, oh, it's not the best time for us. Why don't you talk to us in the fall? And so I'm going to be going back to the ones that I've already met with, and I'm going to be saying, we sent these EPs abroad from your department because you passed our materials along. Now, would it make more sense for you to invest in us and kind of work with us more in the future in a more consistent way?
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. And that goes back to like the what's in it for me. Like what do these departments actually want? And that's an important question to answer. So, cool. Any other thoughts? Any questions? Got a haircut.
This is not really regarding investments, but like I was
totally fine. Yeah.
VPTM, and then he said for summer, like for VPF, the roles include having a summer investment portfolio and monthly budget review, along with ROI and other investments.
Yeah.
So what exactly is having like monthly budget review and summer investment portfolio?
Yeah. So the monthly budget review is really simple. It's mostly looking at, if you haven't already created a summer budget, that's the first step. That way you can actually have a budget to compare to your actuals. But then with the summer team that you have, first working with Tony or your VPTM to understand how many people are going to be there for the summer, what are their JDs, what's like their actual goals, what's their capacity to achieve them, and then what's the gap that you saw either from the spring or that you foresee in the fall that could be made up in the summer. For example, if you're short on your IGT or IGE sales, what are the summer sales that are happening there to make up that gap? And so honestly, monthly budget review, simply put, is just comparing your budget to your actuals and then making cuts for the future months or for your future budget, so that when you come back in the fall, if once the entire LC is back in the fall, you have a full synopsis of what happened over the summer, what you've executed, what worked, what didn't. That way, just like the spring, you can look at how can we plan for the fall budget to reflect the things that have worked. Because summer is completely different than your spring and fall semesters, because you're not going to have an entire campus of people. You're not going to necessarily have the same hiring desires from a company. All these things are very different. And so making sure you have that budget for future years so that the summer plans can be understood there. So it's mostly just a like historical data perspective. Having your budget versus actuals for the summer is really important. So monthly budget review in that sense is just comparing your budget versus your actuals. Or if you didn't have a budget, which I am now recommending that you do before the summer starts, you should definitely compare that and see what happens there. And then in terms of, were you just asking about the budget part, or were you asking about the investment portfolio as well?
There was something called summer investment portfolio.
Yeah. So what I mean by that, I'm just using fancy words. Essentially, I wrote these things that you guys should do. Is what were the investments that you made, as well as what are your planned investments? So similar to your budget is the numerical translation of your income targets. Like, so you plan to have X amount of exchanges, that translates to X amount of revenue. You planned to spend X amount on networking events, which relates to five networking events equals $500, just as an example. So then you can say our expenses translates to 5 networking. Like we have a budget expense of $3,000. We have 5 networking events. Like what does that actually break down to? 5 networking events, a conference, I don't know, like a retreat. So like what does your expenses for the summer break down to, as well as what are your revenues translate to in terms of exchanges, or how did you get that revenue? One avenue that I've seen, at least Michigan's doing, is their alumni are donating. And so that could be something that you push for, is alumni donations alongside your exchange, or at least to support exchange, something like that. And so your investment portfolio are what are the specific things you're doing to cause the revenues and expenses to exist. Because you're investing in something at all times, whether it's in your members, it's in networking events, it's in, I can give example after example, right? And so your investment portfolio and your budget should both be aligned in that your budget are the revenues and expenses associated with all of your investments, and your portfolio is everything you plan to spend in the summer so that you can pass that along to your successor so that they can prepare for summer in the spring, or they can prepare for the spring in the fall. And so like everything is one step in advance so that whoever is succeeding you, or whoever like you, for example, are already looking at the summer and the fall, or you should be. And so wouldn't it be nice to already know what happened in the past so that you can plan for it? And so the idea is like solely from a planning perspective, what are you able to generate so that it's something that's valuable for the future generations? Because I think something I always wished was like, what did we actually invest in? I just saw expenses and revenues, and if I dig deep enough, I can find out. But I have to ask numerous people. It's sort of a back and forth. But instead, if it was all right in front of me and it was a portfolio of here are the investments, like by name, by what they are, by what they were supposed to do, and then I look at the budget, I can understand the picture that's being created. So, yep. They're all intertwined. I just made it into multiple points that you look at the monetary side as well as the what are we actually investing in. So, yes. Cool. Anything else? Let's see, what time is it actually? Oh, 6:53. Oh, we're under time still.
5 minutes.
Yeah. If you have no more questions, no big deal, but I'll keep us rolling until 7. I can tell jokes if you want. So.
God, please ask questions. I'm just kidding. You can read poems, not jokes.
I can tell you about my tea of the week, but no.
Ooh, on live air.
It's on my website. Check it out, goofysworld.com, GOOFYS world.com. Good stuff. Everything you see, I made up, except for the tea and the other thing, which I can't say on the live stream. So you can look it up yourself. It's another drink of choice. So cool.
I have like a question related to my LC. Do you want me to just ask it right now?
Yeah, go for it. It might be relevant to other people. If it's not, that's okay. It's your time to shine.
I think like one of our OGB EP, I guess, he submitted a form for reimbursement. I think Crystal messaged me saying that she's our VP OGB.
Yeah.
Regarding, I think, what's his name again? His name.
For refund or reimbursement?
Oh my God.
It was for refund, probably. I'm pretty sure Crystal asked me for a refund, the refund form. But
refund. Yes. Yeah.
Let me look right now. In the meantime, we can talk. But let me pull it up. I'll look at Podio right now. But I understand what you're, and they haven't received it yet.
They haven't.
Oh, that's what you're asking. Okay. Yep.
Wait, so
Let's
are
look.
they gonna get it directly? Because
they should. So that's the thing. Is if it was a reimbursement, my question is, did you put the information needed for them to receive a check, or did they put their ACH information? But if it was a refund, then some follow-up needs to happen. So let me find out for you. Just give me 1 second. That's a good question, though. So, and then another thing, I'll go ahead and post a message right here so that you guys can screenshot it or take note of it. This is if you're, if for whatever reason your OGX person or any of your OGX functions don't know the bit.ly for a refund. It is, I'm just gonna, before I hit enter, I'm going to make sure that it goes somewhere because bit.lys are confusing sometimes. Okay, cool. bit.ly/ICQS refund, all lowercase. This is how, if an LC, if an EP determines that they believe they should get a refund by XPPs, the XPPs are laid out there, and it's like, what are the criteria for refunds? They should read through that, make sure it still applies to them, and then they fill out this form. So normally it's actually your VP will be the one that fills out this form for an EP. So your VP, Vice President, for an exchange participant.
Yeah. Yeah. Is this a form you sent to her or?
It is. This is the bit.ly that I sent her. So if she filled this out, I'm looking right now at the space just to see if my computer will load. Refund. I'm in a lot of spaces, so I'm trying to find it right now. I promise that it will take me no more than 3 minutes. Ah, here it is. Okay, cool. Let me find Crystal's now. I've heard some funny stories about Crystal that I cannot say on a live stream, but I love her as a human being. So, do you know what this person's name might have been? Actually, don't say that on a live stream. Never mind. I do not say their name on a live stream, actually, now that I think about it.
Write it on a paper and show it.
I could text you.
Message me on WhatsApp. Because I just realized that what I asked is not fine to show on. Yeah. Did she fill out the form yet?
I'm just texting her. She said she said he was approved to go, but he wasn't able to go because of some visa issues. But now he's approved to go this year on an OGV, and he wants a refund for last year. So basically, he paid for both years, so he wants a refund for last year, and he filled out the form himself.
Okay, let me look into this because I do not see his name, and I don't know do you know when they submitted it? I'm looking through the entire term, and okay, they've submitted it a while ago. Maybe. Let's look. Okay. It says the refund was issued 10 months ago. But I think this is a better conversation that we can continue offline because it involves details that I...
Got it. Yeah, no, of course.
He should have received a check because I see that a check was sent in April of, or no, I'm sorry, in June of 2017.
Wait, so this is last year?
Yes, and that's, unless there's another, this is it, the LC is San Jose, the person, their first name is what you texted me. This is definitely, I can continue this conversation with you offline. But yes, I will actually go ahead, if there aren't any more questions that everybody in the world should see, I'll stop the broadcast. We can still continue to talk on here. But yes, thank you to all that attended and all that asked questions. I will be stopping this broadcast now. This has been the Finance Boys, aka Yatish plus Tarek, and special guest Eric Silva from New York City. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for all that attended and asked your questions. We will talk soon. Thank you.